You know that feeling when you're surrounded by people but feel completely alone? When life keeps moving forward, days turning into weeks, weeks into years. But somewhere deep inside, something feels fundamentally wrong. That's not anxiety. That's not depression. That's your soul trying to tell you something critical. The person you're pretending to be is killing the person you actually are. Carl Jung discovered that most people die without ever meeting themselves. They spend their entire lives performing a role, wearing a mask so convincing that they forget it's even there. And the worst part, the world wants it that way. Because the moment you stop performing and start becoming whole, everything changes. This isn't about self-improvement or positive thinking. This is about why you can't seem to escape the feeling that you're living someone else's life, and what it actually takes to reclaim the parts of yourself you buried so long ago you forgot they even existed. Let me ask you something. Who are you when no one's watching? Not the version of yourself you present at work, not the personality you perform for friends or family, but the raw, unfiltered you. Can you even answer that? Or has the performance become so automatic that you've forgotten there's someone underneath? Jung called this performance the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world. And here's what nobody tells you. The persona is necessary. You need it to function in society, to hold down a job, to maintain relationships. But the danger isn't in having a persona. The danger is in mistaking it for your true self. Think about how exhausting your life has become. The constant need to say the right thing, to project the right image, to curate every aspect of yourself for external consumption. You're not living, you're managing a brand. And beneath that brand, your actual self is suffocating, screaming to be heard. The modern world has made this worse. Social media has turned the persona into a pathological obsession. You're not just wearing one mask, you're juggling multiple digital identities, each one carefully crafted to extract validation from strangers. Jung warned that immersion in the collective crushes the individual psychologically. But what happens when the collective isn't even real? When it's an algorithm-driven performance space that rewards the most artificial version of yourself? You fracture. Your identity becomes unstable, shape-shifting, performative. You lose touch with any stable center of consciousness. Research shows that digital environments systematically reward idealized identities, creating what Jung would recognize as narcissistic self-splitting. You oscillate between these virtual avatars while your real self, the one that actually needs to develop, to individuate, to become whole, gets relegated to the background, starving. And here's the most brutal part. The more you perform, the more predictable you become. The more you conform to what others expect, the more you become a tool, an emotional emergency button people press when they need something from you. You think you're building connections, but you're actually building a prison. One where your worth is measured by your utility, your availability, your willingness to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's narrative. The ego, that conscious sense of I, has become nothing more than the manager of your persona. And when your entire identity is built on managing how others perceive you, you're not living your life, you're living theirs. Here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. The ego represents only a tiny fraction of who you are. Behind your conscious awareness lies a vast, infinite unconscious realm, a world of repressed emotions, forgotten memories, unrealized potential, and archetypal forces that have been shaping your decisions without your knowledge. You think you're in control of your life. You believe your choices are rational, considered, yours. But the truth is darker and more unsettling. Most of what drives you is unconscious. You're being controlled by forces you don't even know exist. Jung compared this state to Maya, the Eastern concept of illusion. You're living in a dream, convinced it's reality, while the real forces governing your life operate in the shadows. This split, this chasm between what you're conscious of and what you've repressed into the unconscious, is the source of your suffering. It's why you feel incomplete, why you experience that constant low-grade anxiety you can't explain, why you sabotage yourself at critical moments, why you repeat the same destructive patterns in relationships, careers, and personal choices. The unconscious isn't some abstract concept. It's actively working against you when you refuse to acknowledge it. Every emotion you've suppressed, every authentic desire you've denied, every part of yourself you've deemed unacceptable, it's all still there, festering in the dark. And the longer you ignore it, the more power it accumulates. Jung's concept of the self is the antidote to this fragmentation. The self isn't the ego. The self is the totality of your being, the union of consciousness and the unconscious, the integration of all the parts you've split off and abandoned. It's the archetype of wholeness, the unknown divine center at the core of your existence. But here's the challenge. The self is transcendent. It exists beyond the boundaries of your personal psyche. You can't reach it by thinking harder or trying to be a better version of your current self. You can only reach it by descending into the unconscious and confronting everything you've been avoiding. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the unconscious with consciousness. And it's the only path to genuine freedom. But make no mistake, this journey will cost you everything you think you are. Let's talk about the part of yourself you're most terrified to meet, the shadow. Every trait you dislike in others, it's a projection of something you refuse to see in yourself. Every harsh judgment you make, every person who irritates you for no rational reason, every quality you find repulsive, it's all a mirror. The shadow is the repository of everything your ego has disowned, everything you've deemed incompatible with the person you want to be. But here's what most people miss. The shadow isn't just your darkness. It's also your buried potential, your repressed strengths, your disowned power. Jung discovered through clinical work that the shadow contains normal instincts, appropriate reactions, realistic insights, and creative impulses. The gold you're searching for, it's in the shadow. But you'll never find it if you keep running. Look at your life right now. What patterns keep repeating? Where do you sabotage yourself? Maybe you procrastinate on creative projects because deep down you're terrified of judgment. Maybe you explode in anger at people in subordinate positions because you feel helpless in your own life. Maybe you play the victim in every conflict because taking responsibility feels too threatening. These aren't character flaws, they're symptoms. Symptoms of unintegrated shadow material controlling you from the unconscious. You can't think your way out of this. You can't positive think your way to integration. The only way through is confrontation. Jung developed a technique called shadow mapping using the principle of inversion. Take your greatest strengths, the qualities you're most proud of. Now flip them. What's the shadow side? If you pride yourself on being disciplined, your shadow might be rigidity, harsh self-judgment, an inability to be spontaneous. If you value your kindness, your shadow might contain suppressed rage, resentment, the need for boundaries you never set. The shadow also contains what Jung called the golden shadow, the positive qualities you've repressed. Maybe you were taught that ambition is selfish, so you buried your drive for success. Maybe you learned that anger is unacceptable, so you suppressed healthy assertiveness. Maybe creativity was discouraged, so you've convinced yourself you have no artistic talent. But here's the truth. If you can recognize and admire a quality in someone else, the seed of that quality exists in you. Your admiration is proof of latent capacity. Reclaiming the golden shadow requires conscious, deliberate action. Identify one disowned positive quality, then express it in small, manageable ways every single day. Want to reclaim assertiveness? Start by stating your preferences clearly in low-stakes situations. Want to access creativity? Give yourself permission to make bad art. The shadow doesn't integrate through understanding alone. It integrates through embodiment. And when you refuse to do this work, the shadow doesn't disappear. It goes underground and controls you through projection, self-sabotage, and unconscious acting out. Every conflict in your life that feels disproportionate, shadow projection. Every time you feel trapped in repetitive patterns, shadow possession. The shadow will run your life from behind the scenes until you have the courage to turn around and face it. Once you've confronted the shadow, and only after you've done that work, you arrive at the deepest layer of the unconscious, the contrasexual archetype. For men, this is the anima, the feminine aspect of the psyche. For women, it's the animus, the masculine aspect. This is where most people's psychological development stops completely, because meeting the anima or animus means confronting the parts of yourself you've been taught to deny based on gender conditioning. It means a man must open to emotionality, intuition, vulnerability, and creativity, all the qualities labeled feminine and therefore weak. It means a woman must own her capacity for assertion, logic, spiritual authority, and decisive action, all the qualities labeled masculine and therefore unfeminine. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. If you haven't integrated your contrasexual archetype, you're projecting it onto every romantic relationship you have. And this projection is destroying your capacity for genuine intimacy. Think about your romantic history. Have you ever fallen obsessively for someone, convinced they were perfect, only to later discover they were a deeply flawed human being? Have you ever felt an intense, inexplicable pull towards someone who wasn't good for you? Have you ever tried to change a partner, to mold them into the person you needed them to be? That's archetypal projection. You're not seeing your partner as they actually are. You're seeing them through the distorting lens of your own unconscious anima or animus. Jung outlined 4 developmental stages for these archetypes, and most people never progress beyond the first 2. For the anima in men, stage 1 is Eve, relating to women purely through physical desire and security needs. Stage 2 is Helen, worldly, intelligent women who represent competence and romantic idealization. Stage 3 is Mary, the ethical, virtuous woman, the paragon of moral perfection. Only at stage 4, Sophia, meaning wisdom, does a man develop enough to see women as actual, complex individuals rather than archetypal vessels. For the animus in women, stage 1 is Tarzan, raw physical power and attractiveness. Stage 2 is Byron, the man of action, competence, and romance. Stage 3 is Lloyd George, rational authority, the professor, the orator. Only at stage 4, Hermes, the spiritual guide, does a woman internalize masculine wisdom rather than seeking it externally. Here's the pattern you need to recognize. A woman fixated on career achievement and external masculine success will often compulsively seek out hyper-masculine stage 1 or 2 partners. The athlete, the bad boy, the charismatic man of action. Meanwhile, she'll unconsciously devalue men who display emotional depth or vulnerability. Why? Because those qualities represent the undeveloped parts of her own psyche that she's projecting outward. The same dynamic operates in men. A man who hasn't integrated his emotional life will chase idealized women who seem to embody all the feelings and intuition he lacks, then become frustrated when they can't fulfill the impossible archetypal role he's assigned them. The goal of individuation at this stage is the inner sacred marriage, the conjunctio. This means withdrawing your projections from your partner and integrating the contrasexual energies within yourself. It means a man develops his own emotional intelligence, creativity, and intuitive capacity, so he stops needing a woman to carry those qualities for him. It means a woman develops her own authority, meaning-making, and spiritual wisdom, so she stops seeking those qualities exclusively in men. This is brutally difficult work. It requires you to consciously dialogue with the anima or animus, through active imagination, through dream work, through recognizing when conflict with your partner is actually conflict with your own unconscious archetype. But when you do this work, something miraculous happens. You stop trying to force your partner into an archetypal mold. You see them as they actually are, beautifully, frustratingly, perfectly human. And for the first time, you become capable of conscious, choiceful love rather than compulsive, fated attraction. Understanding all of this intellectually means nothing. if you don't have practical methods to engage with the unconscious. Jung didn't develop a philosophy, he developed a technology. Here are the core techniques that will change your relationship with your inner world. Active imagination is the foundational practice. It's a method of consciously engaging with unconscious content while fully awake. You enter a relaxed state, invite an image or emotion from the unconscious to emerge, then engage with it as if it's a real, autonomous entity. You have conversations with it. You let it move and transform. You give it external form through writing, drawing, or creative expression. The difficulty isn't technical, it's psychological. Your ego will resist this process violently because it requires surrendering control. It requires acknowledging that there are autonomous forces in your psyche that don't obey your conscious will. Jung said the real obstacle is lack of mental or moral courage. Most people are simply too afraid or too lazy to confront the irrational, disruptive material that emerges. But this is how integration happens. When you give unconscious content a voice, when you express it in tangible form, you teach your ego that the inner world has value. You validate symbolic reality, and gradually, the unconscious stops being an enemy and becomes a resource. Dream work is the other essential practice. Dreams are direct communications from the self, offering guidance, warning, and insight. But Jungian dream interpretation isn't about symbols in a book. It's about amplification, expanding dream images into their universal mythological context. A lion in your dream isn't just about personal anger. Through amplification, you discover the lion represents royalty, nobility, fierce protection, the symbol of the heart across cultures. You're not just analyzing your personal psyche, you're connecting to the archetypal story currently active in your life. This is what transforms a dream from a random neural firing into a teaching story with profound relevance to your individuation journey. Jung insisted on working with serial dreams, a sequence over time that reveals the developmental arc of the psyche. Keep a dream journal. Record every dream, even if you wake in the middle of the night. Date them, look for patterns, recurring symbols, evolving themes. The unconscious is trying to tell you something, but you have to be disciplined enough to listen. Let's be brutally honest about what individuation costs, because if you're not willing to pay this price, you should stop reading now and go back to your comfortable, fragmented existence. When you begin the journey toward the self, you will lose people. Friends who only valued you for the role you played will disappear. Family members who need you to stay in your assigned position will become hostile. Romantic partners who were attracted to your persona rather than your authentic self will leave. You will be misunderstood. People will call you selfish, arrogant, cold, difficult. They'll say you've changed, and they'll mean it as an accusation. Because to them, you have changed. You've stopped being the predictable, manageable version of yourself they could control. You will experience profound loneliness. The journey toward the self requires periods of isolation, not as punishment, but as necessity. Jung understood that individuation demands temporary withdrawal from the collective, from the constant noise of external expectations. You need silence to hear your own voice. You need solitude to distinguish between who you actually are and who the world has told you to be. This loneliness will feel unbearable at times. You'll question whether you're making a terrible mistake. You'll wonder if protecting your peace is worth losing connection. You'll be tempted to put the mask back on, to return to the safety of conformity. But here's what happens if you persist. The loneliness transforms. It shifts from the loneliness of absence to the loneliness of total presence, your own presence. You discover that you can be whole within yourself, that you don't need to abandon your truth to maintain relationships, that the people who can't accept your authentic self were never truly with you in the first place. And gradually, something new emerges. You stop being a reactor and become a creator. You stop being shaped by circumstances and begin shaping reality from within. You become selective, not cold. but sovereign. You only accept relationships that resonate with your peace, your truth, your wholeness. And when you do connect with others from this place of integration, the connection is real, not performative. The modern world will fight you every step of the way. Consumer culture wants you fragmented, anxious, seeking external solutions to internal problems. The digital sphere wants you performing, curating, competing for validation. Mass culture wants you predictable, controllable, replaceable. Individuation is an act of rebellion against all of it. It's refusing to be another cog in the machine. It's choosing meaning over comfort, depth over distraction, wholeness over approval. The self is already there. It's been there your entire life, waiting. It's the organizing center of your psyche, the transcendent archetype of wholeness that's been pulling you toward integration even when you didn't know it existed. You see it in symbols that appear across cultures. The mandala, the circle that represents psychological order. You see it in religious figures like Christ, Buddha, the Tao, universal representations of the realized self. These aren't external gods demanding worship. They're symbolic maps of the psychological territory you're trying to reach. The self speaks through synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences where your inner state is reflected in outer reality. When you're aligned with your authentic path, synchronicities increase, recurring symbols appear, opportunities manifest at the exact right moment. It's not magic, it's the psyche's way of confirming that consciousness and the unconscious are moving together toward the same goal. But the self isn't something you achieve and then possess. It's not a destination where you arrive and get to rest. The self is a constant companion, a lifelong dialogue, an ongoing process of integration. You'll spend your entire life becoming who you actually are. And that's not a burden, it's the gift. Jung saw the task of individuation as analogous to the alchemical process of creating the philosopher's stone. The stone isn't an external object, it's a symbol of the integrated self found within. Alchemy, in Jung's understanding, is psychological. It's the art of expanding consciousness, of transforming the base material of your fragmented psyche into the gold of wholeness. When you've lost your way, when you don't know what to do, you can only surrender to the higher wisdom of the self. Not as a passive giving up, but as an active trust in the organizing principle that's been guiding you all along. The self is objective. It exists beyond your personal preferences and fears. It connects you to the structures of being itself, to the fundamental patterns that organize reality. This is why individuation isn't selfish. True psychological wholeness leads to deeper, more genuine relationships with others. It leads to empathy, mutual understanding, and the desire to become an ally in other people's journeys. You improve your relationship with yourself, with others, and with nature. But it all begins with the courage to turn inward. So here we are. You've read this far, which means some part of you recognizes the truth in these words. Some part of you is ready to stop performing and start individuating. But reading isn't enough. Understanding isn't enough. Awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. The question is, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to sit in silence and confront the parts of yourself you've been avoiding? Are you willing to keep a dream journal and take your unconscious seriously? Are you willing to practice active imagination even when it feels ridiculous or terrifying? Are you willing to withdraw your projections from others and own your shadow? Are you willing to lose people who can't accept your wholeness? Are you willing to be misunderstood, judged, rejected in the name of psychological integrity? Are you willing to endure the loneliness that comes with choosing yourself? Because if you're not willing to pay that price, nothing will change. You'll continue living as a fraction of yourself, wondering why you feel empty despite having everything you thought you wanted. You'll keep performing the same roles, repeating the same patterns, suffocating under the weight of a life that isn't actually yours. But if you are willing, if you're ready to descend into the unconscious, to face the shadow, to integrate the contrasexual archetype, to trust the self, then everything changes. You reclaim the energy you've been hemorrhaging through fragmentation. You discover capacities you didn't know you possessed. You become whole, not perfect. Jung's final message is clear. There is only one way to the soul, and it is your way. Not mine, not Jung's, not some prescribed path you found in a book or learned from a guru. Your way. The unique path that only you can walk. The path that requires you to look within and find the truth that's been waiting there all along. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. The choice is yours. Will you continue dreaming, or are you finally ready to wake up?